Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. I'm your host, Amanda, and my amazing co-host is...
Hello, I'm Meagan.
Hey. All right, so we are your source for messy, imperfect homeschool advice and community. And honestly, we're so glad you found us.
Yeah, speaking of messy, did you just hear the dog food bin being shaken during your
Hmm?
introduction?
I didn't actually hear it. I was busy talking.
Okay, there you go. Because right as we were about to record, I said to one of my kids, "Hey, could you feed the dog?" And she shook the kibble in the bin, and I was like, "Okay." So yeah, messy it is, right? But
Yep,
we're here.
imperfect.
Okay.
Yep.
You can settle in and relax with us because we are very real. All right. Unfiltered insights, homeschool life, the works, all of it comes here. We love homeschooling. Love it, love it, love it. But we don't sugarcoat some of the big decisions or the pressure that comes with homeschooling, or sometimes the rough days that exist in the world of homeschooling. And a lot of influencers that we see online do that. And we just feel like it's such a huge disservice to people to do that, because then you're thinking, why am I the only one who has rough days or feels super stressed out about this or whatever? So no, we'll give you the full scoop and nothing but the truth here or whatever. However, I don't know. It is what it is, right? We're glad you're here. Okay.
Yes.
Talk about
Well,
not polished, not influencer. Okay.
well, that's it, right? I mean, it's that thing. We are glad you're here and we are all about the truth while, also doing our best to protect the privacy of our children. And these days, that's a really weird, challenging line to draw in the sand, but it's important and we're doing the best we can, which is another perfect example of the fact that we are far from perfect, but we're doing the best we can. Something else that we are also all about is secular and progressive views, right? The homeschool world is really a mixed bag. And hey, variety is the spice of life. So you'd think that we'd find that fun. And, look, sometimes it is fun, sometimes it's interesting, but there's definitely nothing fun or charming about hate speech and bigotry and racism and 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 so we like to make it very clear that we believe Black Lives Matter, women's rights and trans rights are human rights. We stand with the LGBTQAI plus community. We believe no human being is illegal or can be illegal, and just like so much more. I mean, we could do an entire episode of all of the different things we believe that basically come down to like empathy, understanding, and compassion kind of rock. Yay.
Yeah, human rights, imagine. So it's bananas though, because the funny thing is when our episodes come out every week, we'll share in Facebook groups like, hey, we just dropped a new episode about such and such a topic or something like that. And sometimes people are like, ew, they're so political, or we can't approve your post because you're political. But if you break down the things that Amanda just said, these are statements that acknowledge other human beings' humanity. And we're just still so confused about how and when that became political, because I can't. So yeah, we
Uh,
don't get it.
well, yeah. I mean, and the thing is like, I would argue that if you have a problem with any of those statements, like you're just as political as we are. And ironically, unironically, probably of the belief system with that great story about like throwing stones from glass houses or whatever, but like, okay. All right. Anyway, it's not an Amanda Soapbox episode. So today, the episode we shall actually do our best to provide a little spot of calm, maybe some reflection, hopefully a laugh or two. And yeah, also hopefully some great homeschooling information. That's what you're here for. Maybe you're just here for the community and you're like, I just need to not think too hard with some people who are also clearly not thinking too hard. So today, we will be talking about solid foundational skills that come from playing games and just play in general, but games. So people often talk about learning through play, but then they don't really go deep enough on it. And it leaves you kind of like, yeah, I get it, but what exactly are they learning? How exactly are they learning? How am I supposed to quantify this or justify it to the other people in my sphere that are like, did you actually homeschool today? So today we'll be going deep into gameplay and just how beneficial it can be. But as usual, we like to start off all of our episodes with a weekly update. It's part of our whole keeping it real vibe. So, how's your week going, Megan?
It's pretty good. Pretty good. Pretty good. So last week we hosted our hub here in Lisbon. So that was, of course, a whole busy week, of course. Amazing, but busy. P.S. I am hosting hubs next year in both Egypt, we're doing Cairo and Luxor, and in Naples, Italy. So we know that the economy is an absolute disaster, but there are still people who are world schooling because they don't have a home base or something like that. So if your circumstances allow, we would love to welcome you. So that's that. But yeah, I kind of had a pin in a project with my oldest child where we'd been talking about him putting out some coursework and some support and some community for young Pokemon players or kids who aren't even playing Pokemon yet, but who love the cards and they're drawn to the cards and they love talking about them and they love collecting them and showing them to friends, but they have no idea what they do or what they're for. And there is an entire offline game where you build a deck and battle playing Pokemon with these cards. There's huge, huge, huge communities of people who do this all over the world. And so he and I were kind of talking about it. And I'm like, there's so many kids that just love the cards, but they don't know what to do with them. And I can speak for myself as a parent. I had no clue. I mean, that was not a skill I was going to be able to teach my kid. I know your kid's recently gotten into Pokemon cards. Like, are you sitting him down and explaining to him the origins of all of these cards and how they work?
No, I have no idea. He was like, we were visiting my family about a month ago now at this point, and my brother was like, does he have a deck? Does he play? And I was like, oh, he's got a lot of cards. Is that a deck? My brother was like, no. I'm like, okay, then I
Yeah.
don't know.
Exactly, right? And that's what I said. I was like, a lot of people don't know how to teach their kids and all this. And it's an amazing game. I mean, hello, we're talking about gameplay today. There's so much learning through Pokemon and all of those trading card games. I mean, there's a ton of math and there's a ton of strategy and critical thinking and reading and all sorts of stuff. So it's awesome. So I had said to him, okay, cool. I can help you kind of add some structure to your ideas and whatnot. But this is an after the hub sort of activity. So that's where our focus is right now. So that's been good. And then my other major life update is that I started making friends with my oven, which has been good. It's interesting. We've never really rented before as adults or like mature adults. I mean, I rented when I was like 20, but not
as
since
as real
then.
grown-ups, exactly.
Yeah,
Yep.
thank you. Right. Yeah, like an actual grown up. I certainly wasn't baking at 20. I was partying a lot more. I was baked often, but was not baking, right?
Yes, that would be accurate for you. I was actually baking. I used to
Okay.
stress bake like nobody's business. I was a big stress baker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have this apartment and it has a very apartment grade oven in it. It's not like what we would get when I would buy a house and we would put a brand new oven in that had dual this and convection that and whatever. And so,
Mm.
yeah. And then on top of it, so it doesn't have a digital where you punch in the numbers, you have a dial. So
Mm.
the accuracy is not amazing when it comes to doing that. And then in Europe, a lot of ovens and microwaves and stuff like that don't have words on them because
Mm.
they're sold in multiple countries where languages are different. And so it's all symbols on the ovens and the microwaves and stuff like that. And you're left like, what do these two squiggly lines mean? What does the squiggly line plus the straight line mean? Like, I don't know. So the other day, finally, I took a picture of my oven and I put the brand in on Chat GPT and I was like, can you find me the manual and explain it to me? Because it's going to be in Portuguese. And so I figured out what all the symbols mean and all that kind of stuff. And I baked a loaf of banana Nutella bread the other day that didn't come out gummy. So
Mm.
that was a major win. I was pretty excited about that. I still can't convert Celsius in my head, but we're making progress. We're getting there.
Yeah.
So, so I was happy to befriend my oven a little bit. That it was just like another one of those things that was like something out of sync in your world where you're like, you go to do something and you're like, fuck, I still don't know how to use the oven. So we got it sorted out, I think, this
Oh,
week. I don't
good.
want to be too presumptuous and come across as really bold. And then next week I'm going to make something and it's going to be a disaster. But I feel like we're moving in the right direction in my bonding process with the oven. So I'll take it.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Good.
Excellent. So how about you? What's new in your world?
Well, if all things go as they should, by the time people are listening to this, I will be on family vacation in Bali, and I'm very excited about that. So, if you listen to the show on a regular basis, you know that we travel a lot. Most of the time, my partner, my husband, does not travel with us. And if he does travel with us, it is with the intention of working because his job is pretty flexible. So he works during the week and then he takes the weekends off to do things with us or go on little adventures. But once or twice a year, I can usually get him to commit to actually like taking work off and truly doing a family vacation with us. And Bali is supposed to be that. Now, of course, he got a big new project right before we left. And so he's not entirely sure he can take all of the time off because we're going to be gone for a little while. It's like 30 hours travel each way. And so the last time we did a big family vacation like this, where we had to travel for more than a day one way, we were only there for 5 nights and it just was not enough time. And I fully understand the amount of privilege we have to be able to say, like, well, it took 2 days to get there and then we stayed for 5 nights and we took 2 days to get home and it was not enough. And so instead of just taking 1 week of vacation, we're going to take more. But he's been with his company long enough that he can take more if he needs. And so we're taking this huge trip to Bali. And I've said I'm mostly trying to take time away from all of my jobs and things. So I'm leaving Meagan to hold down the fort. I'm feeling a little guilty about that because I've been working really hard with someone who's supposed to be helping us get our Facebook ads up and running. We have all of these great courses and they're all super affordable. But short of constantly advertising them and being in groups and being like, hey, did you know that we have a course about all kinds of curriculum and resources that's only $17? Or, hey, you're talking about how you're going to homeschool your preschooler. Like, maybe don't get a curriculum. We have this great course that's how to do preschool and kindergarten. Like, it takes a lot of work for us to always be doing that. So we really want to like nail down ads, like Facebook ads, so that they're kind of selling themselves at least a little bit. I'm working with someone, she's from another country. She's great with ads, but she's like, I don't understand your target demographic. Like, what is even happening here? And so I was really hoping to have that all wrapped up before I went on this wonderful 3-week vacation to Bali. That is not looking like it's actually going to happen. So I'm going to leave that hanging and hopefully Meagan can hold down everything else. And then we'll just pretend like Facebook ads aren't out there and a giant pain in my ass, in our shared ass. I'm not really sure how that works, but yeah, I'm mostly just like, I have to remember I got the update from the airline this morning. And when I clicked on it, I was supposed to magically be in Seattle. And I was like, what the hell happened to my ticket? Like, I don't live anywhere near Seattle, and I definitely bought a ticket that got me from my home airport to Seattle before we jumped on a plane to Asia. So that was a little bit stressful, but I got that sorted out. And then I have to remember tomorrow to go online and do the health and customs form you have to do online, and it has to be done within the 72-hour window before you land in country. But it's a lot of hours that we're traveling. And so I can't do it too far ahead of time. So there's that. But we did get our Bali tourist tax paid and we got our visas. And so I just have to remember to do that one last thing. So yeah, I'm just trying to focus on that and not worry about the 101 things that I swore I was going to get done before I went on vacation. So yeah, there we are.
There you go. It's going to be good.
Yep.
I'm
Yeah.
excited. I can't wait to see pictures and stuff. You're going to have the best time ever. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be
I
good.
think it'll be good. Yeah.
That'll be an excellent learning adventure, but closer to home learning adventure, gameplay. Okay. So
Yes.
let's discuss. This episode actually spawned from an episode we did a couple of weeks ago called What Counts as School. And we were talking about board games, and it led to a whole rabbit hole of searching specific skills that kids develop through board games and play. But the list was so long and so in depth that we really couldn't do it justice during the What Counts as School episode. If you're reading between the lines, this is another situation where I went down a whole like Alice in Wonderland journey and was like, oh my gosh, look at all this data that I found. And then I couldn't stop. And I was like, this needs to be an episode. We've had other episodes that have come from that situation as well. Our November unit study is like a novel as a result of some of that. So, yeah, once my brain gets going and I'm interested in something, everyone's going to come along on that journey too. So part of the motivation for this episode as well is we are in so many different homeschool communities and groups, and especially around birthdays and holidays and stuff like that, people are like, I need recommendations for educational games that I can play with my kids. And the reality is most games are educational. Right? You do not need to be spelling words. It doesn't have to be Scrabble. You don't have to be doing math equations. You don't have to necessarily be counting money for gameplay to be developmental, educational, and totally amazing.
Okay, now no one, and I mean absolutely no one who listens to us on the regular is going to be surprised by the fact that I'm more lukewarm on this idea of gameplay counting as learning slash school beyond the early elementary years, unless it is one of those truly educational games that Megan just poo pooed.
I didn't poo poo
Now,
them, but I didn't say that they were the epitome of learning. They are not the exclusive domain of learning.
okay. So and I mean, look, it's that thing. Like for me, for us in our home, like sure, maybe for a lazy day or even a bad week, maybe as electives, we definitely have a chess elective every year because my kiddo really enjoys chess and there are a lot of great skills that come from that. But yeah, general gameplay, game schooling, it's not my cup of tea. That doesn't mean it can't be yours. So, I mean, as always, when you listen to us, you might lean more towards Megan, you might lean more towards me, you might find yourself somewhere in the middle or somewhere even beyond where either one of us is on the spectrum. And that's truly what we hope to bring with this podcast, right? Like, yes, we agree with secular progressive views and this kind of stuff, but we do disagree on a lot of things. We homeschool very differently. And we want to bring that. So it's okay wherever you fall there. That said, this episode, we are going to run through some broad growth categories, I guess you could say, and then kind of break down some of the very specific ways that kids learn those skills through gameplay.
Yeah. And to be clear, a lot of what we're going to talk about today can apply to different types of gameplay. So, board games, sometimes even just casual playground play, some of these things will apply to. Sometimes it might apply to team sports, video games. Those are kind of the big ones, but maybe there's others that just aren't popping into my head. In my specific home, our primary method of play, especially when my kids were younger, it was totally board games and card games. As they've gotten older, we did finally get a gaming console like 3 years ago, which my oldest is almost 18. So we were very late to the game on in a gaming console. And yeah, it's not used all the time. Sometimes the kids will sit down and play for a little bit. Sometimes then they'll go days without playing it. It's not kind of the lifeblood of our household. We are more of an offline gaming family. My boys in particular, as I mentioned earlier, we were talking about Pokemon. Both my boys play epic amounts of trading card games between Magic the Gathering and Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! And all kinds of stuff. So yeah, so some of these things will apply differently depending on how you play in your household. But yeah, what are your kind of approaches to play, Amanda? Are you more board game or what's play like in your world?
Well, for our house, a huge part is still kind of the casual playground, imaginative play. My kiddo still very much enjoys that. And we have a group of friends. I think I've talked before about how this year we're trying to do quote unquote schoolwork 3 days a week. And one day is set aside for electives and a huge chunk of just play time, right? Kind of like play date, play time. And then, yeah, the same Again, if you've listened, you're not surprised by the fact that we don't do much online or video game type stuff. We do board games, less card game stuff. My kiddo does play chess. We're big on
Yeah.
puzzles, and we'll talk about some of the skills that helps build and provide even as adults and things like, right? We all know that puzzles are good for your brain, even the older you get. But
Hmm.
yeah, so that's more where we're at.
I like it.
All right. So, our first category of skills, social and emotional skills. This is that whole like, what about socialization thing, which is then often quickly followed by, but they won't know how to do a group project. Okay. Game playing. It's going to cover this for you. You've got cooperative play and teamwork. Kids are learning how to plan together, share information. They're doing their group project. It's just not a boring group project on something that they couldn't care less about. They are clarifying roles through games. It's all collaboration. So here you go. Here's your group project. Sportsmanship and resilience. I think we all know someone these days, probably a lot of someone's who could stand to learn a bit more about losing gracefully and just generally being supportive and encouraging in a team environment. This is one of those skills that games absolutely help with, or just general playtime from board games to sports. They're all a great opportunity for kids to learn the life skill of resilience. This, like, it's okay to lose, and then it's great to try again. And you might lose again, and that's okay. That's that resilience. It comes in with game playing in a way that's a little bit more fun than like, this worksheet was wrong, do it again. This worksheet was wrong, do it again. Nobody likes that kind of resilience. Negotiation and persuasion. Games involving trade or shared goals. Kids have to advocate for themselves while keeping in mind the group dynamics and trying to keep that like healthy and positive and balanced. They discover how to make deals, how to compromise, and influence others, hopefully respectfully. Uh, Sometimes it goes a little off the rails. That's gaming in general, but you know, good skills and doing it in a respectful manner. And speaking of respectfully, this idea of empathy and perspective taking, sometimes we overlook this, but it is so important. And it happens a lot in a lot of different types of games where kids really need to think about what the other player is doing, what they're building, what they've got, how that's going to play into the game, and how that's going to impact what they're doing and what they're building and thinking. All of this helps build empathy. And the world needs a whole lot more of that. So,
Oh, yeah.
and then lastly, kind of in this just general social emotional space, you have conflict resolution. I don't know what game you're playing if you don't occasionally have conflict, but it's certainly not the same games we're playing. But, just generally, like if kids are playing just kids amongst themselves, but if they're playing with grown-ups too, there are so often disagreements about rules, the like, that's not how that goes, or, like house rules or just all of these kinds of different things. So games are a really great neutral ground where there are set rules. There is a rule book that you can go back to and work through rather than these kind of like super emotionally intense, like, well, that's not what I heard, or that's not what like, you're like, well, let's go look at the rule book. And it's just a great way to model positive, healthy conflict resolution.
I think among my kids, gaming is actually the most conflict they have amongst them. Generally, they get along really, really well. My boys in particular are best friends. But yeah, they have different levels of competitiveness. And so when you put that into a gaming situation where you have like one who's out for blood and one who's not, it gets interesting, right? It gets really interesting. Generally, they're kind and respectful and get along to one another. And sometimes when there's gameplay like Monopoly is out or something like
Mhm.
that, Monopoly tends to be one of the big ones that really,
Ah,
really
yeah,
can ruffle some feathers.
it causes a lot of emotional strife in our home as well. We play Monopoly, but man, Monopoly, I think that's why it's still around, because everyone remembers someone flipping the Monopoly board at some point.
Yeah. My oldest loves it. It's one of his favorite games, and sometimes he has trouble rallying a group to play because everybody's like, "Oh, this never goes well." But it's like those skills at work, they're
Mhm.
challenging skills, and so it's
Yeah.
important, you know?
Yep.
Yeah. I like it. All right. Then, as another kind of broad category of skills, we've got executive function skills. And we've done episodes on executive function skills when it comes to academic learning and child development and things like that. But basically, you can think about executive function skills as kind of the air traffic control of the brain. This is what's directing so many of your child's actions and responses and things like that. So, things like working memory, which, hello, I live in a very neurodivergent household. Working memory, some of us have a very difficult time with. Very, very difficult time. So, yeah, kids need to remember the game rules. You have to remember clues. I mean, sometimes when you're even playing something as basic as go fish, remembering that that person 5 turns ago asked you if you have any fives. It's like, well, clearly they have fives, right? But keeping those things kind of filed away in your brain and working through those things are important. Looking at previous plays to kind of strategize what's coming up, all of that is memory based, and it strengthens their ability to hold and manipulate information in real time. So when you are doing things that are more classically academic or more classically categorized as school, some of that memory strength can carry over, which is wonderful. Then we have something like inhibitory control, waiting your turn. Ooh, that's hard, especially when they're smaller. Resisting an impulse move, right? When you just like really want to go. Resisting an impulse move can really help with self regulation, again, in other aspects of life. Those little tiny experiences during gameplay can really transfer over into patience and focus in other parts of their life. You've got cognitive flexibility. So when a board state changes, you're in the middle of a game, another player shifts strategy, another player puts a domino down in the place that you were going to put your domino down on your next turn. It's like, right? Now you have to adapt super quickly. So it really fosters flexibility and creativity and problem solving and resilience in the face of change. And one thing about life is that stuff is always changing. And sometimes there's disappointment in that change. And being able to shift into those changes a little bit more smoothly can be a result of gameplay.
I
So,
feel like you just described Scrabble. How often are you
yeah,
playing Scrabble? And it's like you have the perfect word and it's going to go
yeah,
right there. And by the time the board gets to you, it's not. And you're like, yeah,
yeah.
right?
Like I
Like,
had a triple word score on that T and you just stole it to write the word toad. Something so stupid. And I had this amazing word. Yeah.
yep, I was going to use all my tiles on that triple word score. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. My brain went to Mexican train because we play a lot of Mexican train. And sometimes
Uh,
it'll be like, oh my gosh, I have this great move that I can do on this train. And then somebody else puts a tile down and you're like, freaking A. So, yeah. Not okay. Yeah. Planning and organization is another thing for executive function. And who could we all use a little help with planning and organization sometimes? A lot of games require setting goals, tracking resources, making sure that you have enough money to buy the property that you land on, or making sure that you have enough cards to do what you need to at a certain phase in the game. You have to sequence actions in order to be successful in your game. And so kids can really learn to plan ahead and think several steps in advance through key components and executive function skills through gameplay, which we love.
yeah, no, for sure. We just talked about a bunch of soft skill things, but there are also things that are maybe more traditional academics. So, numeracy and math thinking, you've got counting and one to one correspondence, this idea of moving pieces accurately or keeping score, right? Depending on the game you're playing, keeping score can be super basic and foundational math concepts, or it can be really intense math stuff. So, developing these early skills and remembering that they can build as your kids get older and the games get more challenging. And it can help kids kind of connect abstract numbers to concrete actions. And then moving into more algebraic things. You've got number sense and operations. So, games that use addition, subtraction, multiplication during scoring, they're building that number fluency and they kind of develop again this nice progression as kids get older and play more and more difficult games. You have this natural low pressure practice for computational thinking that can roll nicely into their pattern and set recognition, which is a huge part of building the foundation for algebraic thinking and categorization. Then you've also got probability and risk. Probability and risk becomes really huge in the middle school and high school and even college level math. But you are 100% working on that with your kiddos when you're rolling dice or having to make uncertain choices. And it helps kids kind of see, well, if you do this, then this happens, or I'm more likely to roll this number. So, what does that mean for how I'm going to play? And this idea of exposing kids to chance and expected value, and then through repetition, they develop an intuitive understanding of likelihood and consequence. And then that can obviously build into a better understanding of, again, that probability and risk kind of thing. And then there are games out there that are employing light, discrete math with graphs and networks. Again, it depends on the game that you're looking at, but root building, connection making games, we love certain versions of Ticket to Ride. And again, you're doing connection making games. There are a lot of games out there that introduce coding as connection making, not coding specifically. And it's this helping kids really understand how systems work by visualizing them and being able to visualize relationships. And that helps with the conceptual idea of how you get there later on as you do next steps.
I like it. Yeah. So continuing on with the concept of more traditional approach to learning through gameplay, Amanda just did numeracy. Let's talk literacy and language skills. And it goes well beyond Scrabble, although we do love a good Scrabble. There's Scrabble Kids too. We had Scrabble Kids. I think our Scrabble Kids was nearly falling apart by the time my kids aged out of Scrabble Kids because it went everywhere with us. If we were sitting in a restaurant, we totally busted out Scrabble while we waited for food. So, yeah, we do love some Scrabble amongst us. So, things like vocabulary and syntax. So, you've got word based and clue giving games that require really precise communication, things like charades and stuff like that. Kids are practicing synonyms and antonyms and phrasing as they stretch their vocabulary, which is super fun. You have narrative and inference for story driven and image interpretation games, things like Pictionary, things like Dungeons and Dragons, which I bring up and Amanda's like, oh my goodness. But it really helps players read between the lines and strengthens their ability to infer meaning and connect ideas contextually. At the hub in Lisbon, there's always a WhatsApp community for the pop-ups and the hubs that we do. There's a whole bunch of different channels within there, but then people can also create channels. And so for the Lisbon one, there was a huge D&D contingency amongst the group. And so it was like, can we set up a D&D channel? I was like, go for it. Absolutely. That's amazing. It was incredible how many people had kids who were into D&D at that particular event, which is fun. And it's an offline game. They're sitting around the table and there's so much communication going on through D&D, which is really, really fun. Following multi-step directions, learning and teaching rules of games reinforces comprehension. So how much fun would it be that when you are transitioning over to a more traditional school activity and you say, okay, I need you to do this and then do this and then do this. If that carried over, how much more amazing would life be? Another thing that's really helpful is if you have a kiddo explain a game to another kiddo. That's really heightened processing right there. Because if you ever had somebody try to explain something to you and you're like, oh, but wait, I forgot to tell you this thing before that now is really important for the thing that I'm about to say. So hold on, back up. Okay, this, now we can go forward again. And you're forward and back the whole time. It's super confusing. But being able to give clear sequenced instructions is a really incredible skill to have.
Well, not only that, but like for us right now, our middle school writing curriculum has my kiddo working on an expository essay, and it's a 5-paragraph essay that's giving instructions. He had to do it for a meal, but this is absolutely laying that groundwork for being able to write expository essays. If you're doing more traditional schoolwork where you need to be able to do those things, you're working on that. But even if you choose not to do that schoolwork where they have to actually write expository essays, throughout their life, they will need the skills that an expository essay gives them. And so if you're doing it just verbally on the regular, that's great too.
It'll carry over. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And then you've got literacy, early literacy, or if you have a kiddo who is struggling with literacy, that really soft, organic approach to continuing to build their literacy confidence and skills are fantastic. Between simple word or picture games, you are really supporting letter recognition and word familiarity that even pre-readers can participate in those sorts of games because the images and the cues from those images and the verbal interaction in the game really fills in those gaps and helps bridge that literacy and helps get them that extra step forward in their literacy approach with that game, which is really amazing. I've talked about it before. My now 14-year-old learned to read so that he could play Pokemon. That was his number one motivation because he was tired of having to either raise his hand and wait for a judge to come and help him figure out what a card said if he didn't already have it memorized, or he would have to ask his opponent, and then his opponent knew what card he had in his hand. And he was like, well, that stinks. So he was like, I think I'm going to have to learn how to read so that I can figure this out on my own. And so he did. That was his main motivation, was just want to be able to play Pokemon better. I was like, okay, great. And that was a, a lot of years ago, and he's still playing Pokemon. So,
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing too is if you have a kiddo who is older and they can read, but maybe they're just a reluctant reader, you've got one of those
mhm.
kids that's like, do not make me read a book. Don't assign a book. I'm not going to read one for fun. Or maybe you've got a kiddo who is struggling to read, whether maybe they have dyslexia or something like that. Games can be a really easy, organic way to practice reading without it being like, I'm making you practice reading. Maybe you put them in charge of the the rules and you're playing Monopoly or you're playing Life or something like that, where you can frequently be like, what's the rule around this, or what's the stock card option thing again? So they have to go to the rule book and tell everyone like, oh yeah, you for sure can do this, this, and this, or in this case you get one card, or in this case you get to pick between three cards. And again, they're practicing their literacy skills without it being that overwhelming, like I put a book in your hands, now read it kind of thing. It's great.
Yeah. Well, then even
Yes.
the number of games where you play, where you draw a card and your next turn is impacted by whatever's on
Mhm.
that card, it's usually just a sentence or two. So it's usually something where even a reluctant or a struggling reader can get through that, or can easily get some support to get through that without it being a really big thing, which is nice.
Yeah, exactly. Little wins and anything that helps grow their confidence because they were able to help the
Yes.
family in that way in a really organic way. That's great.
Love it.
Okay, so we were doing more traditional schooling areas that maybe you feel like, okay, well, I can check this off because I know for sure that we worked on literacy today. So some things that are more maybe interdisciplinary, I guess would be a good way to put it, but just as important, you have logic, deduction, and critical thinking skills. Boy, howdy, do we need people with better critical thinking skills. So, this is a great way to work on that. You've got deductive reasoning. So, players gather clues, they eliminate possibilities to find solutions. Honestly, just this process alone mirrors scientific reasoning and hypothesis testing.
Yeah.
So science is real. This is how it works. We change our ideas based on the evidence that we gather when it's appropriate. You also have inductive reasoning. So, observations, you're observing your patterns across various rounds. It teaches the kids how to draw like general conclusions. Then again, they've got these conclusions, they form theories from the evidence, then they test them, they adjust as they go. Like, great, great skills in general. Another thing it can do for you is spatial logic. So, this is kind of that puzzles we were talking about, but there are plenty of other games too. Like there's that one, something about like don't break the ice or something that's popular
Hmm.
with little kids, but great at all ages. That's one of those to randomly pull out and play with your older kids, kind of like Jenga. You're just trying to see how difficult you can make it for your opponent before the game is done. But it's this idea you're looking at placement or blocking moves. It helps kids visualize cause and effect. physics, depending on how intense you're getting with it. And they can see how a single action can alter the entire outcome of a system. Yeah, sure, maybe it is don't break the ice, the game, but it's the whole system as well, especially as you get into these more and more complex and difficult games.
Yeah, I was thinking of that game Kerplunk, where you have the plastic things
Uh,
that look like spaghetti and the
yeah.
marbles on top, and you pull the spaghetti pieces out, and eventually all the marbles go down and whatever. I was like, oh, that game was so much fun. That's totally, totally in there. One of my
Yep.
kids had a game that he loved, and I think we only just got rid of it when we moved last year, called Suspend. And it's these metal pieces on a frame, and you're putting all these metal pieces on and trying to keep it from toppling over. He loved that game. I mean, even that one, the triangle with the golf tees, and you're supposed to
Oh,
jump
yeah.
over the, right? All that kind of stuff. Some of those can drive you absolutely bananas. Some of them are really challenging.
We got one of those from Cracker Barrel not that long ago, and I was totally stoked because I remember always playing it at my grandma's house. I was like, "Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
look at that. Cracker Barrel, food maybe not so great, but coming in for the win with the wooden games."
Exactly. Right. Yeah. So, continuing on that theme, spatial reasoning and visual perception. You've got mental rotation and tessellations. Interestingly enough, one of my kids is an artist, and there's a whole thing within weaving about tessellations. So, that's actually a word that comes up in my house constantly, which is not
Okay.
something I would have predicted in my younger years. Like, oh, yes, at some point in your 40s, you will sit around talking about tessellations all day. Somehow we do. But it's all about fitting shapes together, which is a huge part of gameplay and puzzles, but it really challenges kids to visualize spatial relationships, which are building foundation work for geometry down the road. For those of us who suck at geometry, thank you, that was me. And engineering type thinking. If you have a kiddo who's looking to go into any of the STEM fields later, some of that visualization of spatial reasoning and pieces might be really, really helpful for them. Then you have visual discrimination, which sounds like a bad thing, but we promise you it's not. So spotting matches or quantities at a glance really helps to sharpen your visual attention to things and attention to detail. Kids are able to strengthen rapid recognition and focus through things like that, which help eventually for reading and math and other skills that they will embark upon in more traditional avenues. All right, so we have some more core skills that we're going to be talking about today. But if all of this is like, yes, yes, I can completely see how all of these things work and how kids can learn through gameplay, but I'm so stuck on the fact that it has to be a workbook and we have to have a worksheet and it has to be done sitting at the table with a pencil in hand. And there might be a time and a place for that for you as well. Maybe there isn't. There's a lot of different ways that you can homeschool. However, if you're newer to homeschooling and really trying to figure out what your environment is going to look like going forward. What does an ideal day of learning look like at your house? What are the skills that you want your kids to have at the end of this adventure of learning together? What are some of the aspects of the traditional school system and approach to education that you don't like? And it's part of the reason that you're homeschooling, or that didn't jive with your child and it's the reason that you pulled your kiddo out of school. All of that stuff can be really, really hard to come to and to have it all gel together so nicely in your mind because we were all raised in a very traditional education system for the most part. And even if you're trying to do something different, it can be so hard to shake some of the traditional mentality. So we have a bunch of courses online, as Amanda mentioned earlier when she was talking about her great love of Facebook ads. We've tried to make them super affordable. Our courses range between $17 and $27. They're online and they are super robust. They come with workbooks so you can sit down and put pen to paper and work this stuff out. So there's a Homeschool 101 course that can help you figure out the direction and the path and the foundation for your homeschool, because it can be so easy to go into a homeschool group and ask a question or see someone else ask a question and get so distracted and so off path by all of the different answers that come up. The other thing too that always blows my mind, you don't know who any of those people are, how much experience they have, how their homeschool life is going. Like if you inherited some money and you were trying to figure out what to do with this money and you needed a financial advisor or somebody who knows how to do retirement planning or something like that, you'd probably want to see their portfolio and know their success rate and all that kind of stuff, right? And then we go into homeschool groups and ask people advice, and people throw out advice, which is so generous in most cases. And it's like we take this advice. It's like you have no idea who these people are and what their background is and how equipped they are to answer those questions. Like they could have started homeschooling 2 weeks ago and they have no idea what's going on. So to me, it just always boggles my mind. Like our courses that we've done, Amanda mentioned the preschool and kindergarten one, we literally read more studies than we could ever tell you about what is age and developmentally appropriate. We looked at global education standards, not just the US education standards. I mean, so much stuff. There's a curriculum course, and Amanda lives and breathes curriculum. Like it's what she does for fun. So that is super in depth, and it's just a straight line path to successful and confident homeschooling. So it's not a matter of picking up all these breadcrumb trails that are in Facebook groups and stuff like that and cobbling them together to hopefully successfully educate your kids. This is like module 1, module 2, module 3, module 4, done, right? And it's straight and succinct and really complete and really comprehensive and just a really direct way to build confidence in your homeschooling. So we'll link them in the show notes. We'd love for you to come and explore them and experience them. If you come across new homeschoolers, if you're an experienced homeschooler and you come across new homeschoolers, pass it along. It's a really easy way to get people up and running. And it's honestly just something I wish existed when I was new, because I cobbled together and there was so much trial and error and there was so much changing of focus. And it would have been so nice if we could have gotten there on a bit more direct path, but we are where we are, and I'm thankful for our journey.
Well, yeah, and I feel like, especially these days, and when I say this, I feel like I'm one of those like grumpy old men, like back in my day. But these days, it feels like when you go ask for advice or suggestions, it's like, this is what I did, and this is why you should do what I did. And because our podcast is based on this idea that, like, okay, yes, we are secular, we are progressive, but we homeschool very differently, and we're not trying to convince anyone that they need to do it our way, or that my way is better than Megan's way, or Megan's way is better than my way. The courses are literally designed to be like, what do you want? What do you see working? What works for your kiddo? Okay, if this works for your kiddo, then you might want to look at these things. If this works for you, then these are resources that are going to apply more to you. It's
It's
not
not a
about what
one size fits
we,
all.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, no, exactly. And it's not like, well, I do it right, and this is how you should implement what I do in your home. That's not what we're going for. We're going for, like, here's all the knowledge we have from the hundreds of other homeschoolers, thousands at this point, that we have talked to and interacted with and befriended. And here are all of the resources that we know about. And they work well this way. Or if you're looking for this, you might look at this one or this one. It's not about what works for us. It's about what we think might work for you based on lots and lots and lots of experience.
Yeah.
And this
And
is
the
so
only
hard to
real
find.
Yeah. And the only real way to know what's going to work for you is to identify what kind of homeschooler you are, how your kid learns best, what your goals are, what your ideal day of learning looks, because that's all personal to you. And then once you've figured that out, then you can match resources to those things. But my ideal day of learning looks very different than Amanda's ideal day of learning. So if she's going to give me recommendations, they're going to go over like a lead balloon in my house. It's just not going to
Yeah.
work, and vice versa. So figuring out what your drivers are and then matching things to your drivers is the key to success.
And you don't have to figure those things out on your own. Our 101 course literally starts
That's what
with
it does.
helping you do quizzes. There are different quizzes to take and things to work through to help you find those answers so that you can take the next steps. They're built in that way. Figure out who you are, who your kiddo is, then figure out how you're going to implement it. Then look at curriculum and resources if you don't want to do curriculum, but you just need some extra resource suggestions for X, Y, or Z because your kiddo is super into science and you're like, yo, I don't know science. Like, whatever that may be, right? Like it's just built really well to help you do what you need. Anyway, we'll get off of that. Let's move on. Okay, so
Gameplay.
yes, games can be fun. So again, still talking about these kind of cross-disciplinary, interdisciplinary skills. You have strategy, systems, and economic thinking, and this becomes especially prevalent when you're looking at any kind of game that uses resource management. Now, this obviously isn't all games, but there are definitely games out there that require balancing scarcity and opportunity cost. And anytime you can find a game that has those things, that is literally teaching kids how to allocate limited resources wisely and planning for the long term. You're basically doing an economics prepper course in your gameplay. And I like that kind of thing. As we said, I'm not a big game schooling person, but there are times when your games can really lay great foundational work, whether it's for algebraic thinking or economics, scarcity, supply and demand. And your kids might not realize that they're learning
Yeah.
that, but they are. And that's going to make it so much easier when you need to go a little bit deeper. Maybe they're doing some kind of an entrepreneurial course, or they want to do some kind of business classes or whatever. And they've got this great foundation. Fantastic.
Another thing that comes through gameplay is creativity and design thinking, which we're a super creative household. We love that stuff. So, open ended expression, creative games that really encourage metaphors and symbolism and clever storytelling. Kids get to explore their imagination without rigid right or wrong answers. If you have a kid who's afraid of making mistakes, if they have that perfectionist challenge where they're kind of paralyzed by doing something wrong, these are great ways to break some of that down and give them some confidence in those things in a fun, lighthearted, low consequence, silly environment, which is super helpful. And then you've got game design and iteration. Amanda brought up before house rules and things like that. The interesting thing when we go to these pop-up hubs with other world schoolers all over the world, we almost always have game nights. And the funniest thing is the number of different variations in the Uno rules in the room.
Oh.
I mean, wowzers. People are like, that's not what that card does. That's not how that card is played. That's not how this works. It's unbelievable. I mean, there is a rule book for Uno, and yet somehow the interpretation of Uno is all over the place. And it was funny because I saw something one time. It was a screenshot of a social media thread or something where the makers of Uno on their social media account for Uno had posted something about the +2 card. And somebody replied with a comment that was like, thanks for the cards. We'll take it from here. And that's so true. That is what has happened with Uno, where it has taken on a life of its own. And there are these entirely different rules all over the place. So this idea of letting kids tweak rules or invent expansions on an existing game to take it to the next level fosters experimentation, where they really can look at evaluating a system, how to improve a system, what the consequences of changing the system are, which can be really, really fun. And yeah, there's a million and one ways to play Uno as a result, apparently.
Well, speaking of real world knowledge, we oftentimes overlook how easy it can be to take those subjects that were maybe either got overlooked or were drudgery or didn't work in your home for some reason and focusing on those in gameplay. And now this I think is where some of those like I'm looking for an educational games come in, but you can absolutely do geography and culture. You've got map and travel based games. It'll introduce kids to regions, obviously continents and things like that, but you can go deeper with actual landmarks. Some of them even do like cultural traditions. So a fantastic way to gain real world knowledge that is also a subject area in traditional school, especially if you're trying to look for ways to squeeze this into this is what we did for our reporting or whatever. History is another one of those. We have a couple timeline based games. We have one specifically that's these little cards with things that happened throughout history, and you put them down and you try to guess. And it's great for actually knowing history. It's great for historical literacy, sequencing, both more math version because you're looking at dates and making sure that you're getting dates right, but just also generally understanding how systems work and the sequencing of events. And then your kid can feel super superior when they beat their parents because you're not good at history. Biology and nature is another one. There are so many different nature themed games out there that can teach species traits, adaptations, evolution, habitats, ecosystems. I 100% learned that more dinosaurs than I realized had feathers because my kiddo had this dinosaur game that had so many dinosaurs I never ever knew existed. And I was like, wow, look at that. And man, he could crush us with that game.
I love that. That's fantastic. We incorporate some of those things into our unit studies that we build as well. We have a couple of timeline games in our unit studies because I remember when my kids were smaller, they loved nothing more. I would take a rope from the dollar store and tie it around one doorknob and then tie it around like a chair, a dining room chair at the other end. And I would give them clothespins and cards. And that's how they learned to sequence numbers and stuff like that. But we've got them in some of our unit studies where you can cut out these cards of historical events, and that's what it is. You could tape them to a wall, you can put up a clothesline and some clothespins, stuff like that. But it's super fun. There's a game called Icons that's about women in history, which we love. And our women in medicine unit study totally has a variation of memory where you flip over two cards and you match the picture of the woman with her accomplishment in medicine and then flip them back over until you get your matches. And through that repetition, you're learning about women who made incredible advancements in the world of medicine. So there's so much fun to be had with gameplay. Love it. We've also got motor skills and sensory regulation. We talked about handwriting not that long ago in an episode, and we talked about the fact that even just like throwing and catching a ball builds those core skills that are essential for handwriting. But yeah, I mean, you've got all kinds of stuff with fine motor and hand-eye coordination. Anytime you're stacking something, flicking something, placing something carefully so that it doesn't knock over other stuff, it builds dexterity, and it really helps with all of that control and focus in those small muscle movements that become important for other things when it comes to writing and just other stuff in general in life. Then you have sensory pacing, which can be challenging, especially for neurodivergent kids. And games help with that because there's predictable turns and there's tactile components that provide comfort and structure. It really helps kids regulate their overexcitabilities and maintain their attention and focus as they track turns going around, which is great.
Well, yeah. And then wrapping up these general groups, I guess you could say. One, again, I feel like we just keep coming back to like the world is a mess and we should really be teaching our kids these skills. So let's make sure we're doing it in fun ways as well as great unit studies and things like that. But ethics, fairness, and civics, we talked before about different ways that you can use the rules and the rule books and all of the things that that does for you. But the rule of law is illustrated in games because the rules apply equally to everyone. And also, you can take that a step further by making the rules not apply equally to everyone and experiencing that and making that a talking point of the rule of law and how it feels when they're not applied equally to everyone. Great, great way to do that in practice it in a way that doesn't actually really hurt anyone, but drives home that point. Okay, so we're almost done. I promise we've got a couple more ideas and we have the mantra, so make sure you stick around for the mantra. But just a quick reminder, we really appreciate you. And if you appreciate us and listening to us, please just take a minute to like and follow wherever you're listening or watching. It helps with the reach. It helps other people who are looking for a new community and they just need a little bit of support. It helps them find us. So yeah, help keep us active there in the good old land of algorithms.
Yeah. All right, friends. So the last thing we want to talk about today is making gameplay accessible to everyone. So let's talk about just a little bit of scaffolding for neurodiverse learners, but really it can be for anybody who just needs a little boost. It needs a little scaffolding sometimes, right? We all do in certain instances in life. So some of the things that you might consider if you have a kiddo who's struggling with the sequencing in a game is just a little visual tracker, whether it's words or whether it's images. So maybe it starts with my turn and then there's a little arrow that says, okay, now I draw a card. Then there's another little arrow. I play whatever the move is on that thing. And then another arrow, I discard a card. Okay, great. And then it's just this visualization that gives them that little boost of confidence so that they're not having to put so much brain power and energy into remembering those steps that it takes away from their ability to do some of the other things we talked about, like keeping an eye on what other people are doing in the game so that they can effectively strategize and things like that. So that's always super helpful. Something like choice menus, if there's maybe 3 viable moves that they can do, maybe giving them those 3 choices and putting it out there so that you can narrow it down and reduce overwhelm or anxiety in making a choice, which is great. And that may or may not be the way they play the game forever, which is totally fine. Or it may be a baby step towards reducing some of the scaffolding over time as they grow and develop in those skills. Another one is to co-op first or team play first. We did a lot of team play, especially when my youngest was the baby. We were a team all the time, me and him. And he was always the one putting the card down, but we were talking about what card we were going to put down first or what domino we were going to put down and why we were going to do it. And he'd be like, I really want to put this one. And I'd be like, okay, well, we could do that. But if we do that, do you think somebody else is going to do XYZ after? And he'd be like, oh, shoot. I'd be like, what do you think if we try this one? And so then he's learning the logic through team play and through discussion. And now we're not a team anymore, which is a little bit sad, but I'm super happy for him.
That so reminds me, there are so many great games out now that are for toddlers and the younger kiddos that are cooperative team play games. And I think they're great. You're building scaffolding, you're talking through these choices and the decision-making process, and you're developing that for them so that when
Yeah.
they're ready to move on to games that aren't cooperative gameplay, they understand the decision-making process that they should be thinking through as they play the game. But I remember when my kiddo was little and my mom would come to visit and be like, let's play a board game. And she would always be like, I don't know, is it a real game where we actually compete or is it one of those stupid cooperative games? Just not about the cooperative, the new genre of cooperative games for toddlers. So sorry, sneaky, snacky squirrel, but grandma didn't play you.
Did not make the cut in grandma's rules. I love it.
Nope.
Another thing you can introduce is a house rule of time limits, which can be really helpful for analysis paralysis. If you have a kid who just cannot figure out what move to make and it holds the game up for forever and forever and everybody's getting frustrated and they're getting stressed and all of that. Just a little sand timer. And it would apply equally to everyone. It wouldn't just be for that kid. That would be horribly mean. But yeah, it's super helpful. We actually have this for my husband when we play Rummy Cub with him, which is a really rare thing because we hate playing Rummy Cub with him because he monopolizes the entire board and he takes forever and he wins in one turn, like all the time, which is what happens when you marry like a genius engineer. But yeah, and P.S. I think in other places it's called something that's not Rummy Cub, but we had the Dutch version that he grew up with and it was called Rummy Cub. But I think it's called Rummy O in some places or just Rummy. I don't know. But yeah. So anyway, yeah, we give him a time limit because otherwise it's like the most infuriating thing to play with him otherwise. So sometimes you just have to put rules into place for people who make gaming difficult.
There you have it. All right. So hopefully you got some really tangible skills that you can reassure yourself when we play games or when my kiddos are gaming. These are the things they're walking away with. Whether that helps you fill out your paperwork, your reporting stuff, or it just makes you feel a little better, or it gives you a little bit more in your back pocket for when someone well-meaning or not, is pushing back on you about whether or not your kids learned today when they say, oh, we just played board games. And you can be like, yes, we did a geography-based game that focused on regions and cultural traditions. And they did this game that worked on algebraic reasoning and pattern recognition, whatever it is. Hopefully this was helpful. And because it's the end of the episode and we always like to wrap up with a mantra, we've got one for you. And you can keep this in mind too. Every roll of the dice builds skills you can't measure on a worksheet.
I like it. Very nice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us today. We hope you took something amazing from the episode and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your homeschooling day.
Yeah. Have a good one.